All right, welcome to the Two Sons podcast. We are moving on to the Game of Thrones, the House of the Dragon episode this week. I'm rewatching Game of Thrones right now, so I'm getting deeply confused on a weekly basis. Just saw the episode where called Hard Home. This episode where Jon Snow leads an expedition of people in the Night's Watch north of the Wall to save some wildlings and bring them back south of the Wall. And when he arrives, he's pleading to the clan leaders of the wildlings to come with him south of the Wall and allowing them to farm lands. And literally, as they're there, the army of the dead attacks them. And there's this incredible scene at the end where they managed to get maybe like a third of them, some portion of them onto the ships before it happens. But at the end, Jon Snow and Tormund, who's his big leader in the his like compatriot with the wildlings, and the giant, one of the few remaining giants, manages to get into the water right as the army of the dead is murdering everybody on the beach. And then the Night King and a bunch of White Walkers walk up to the edge of the water and just has like a staring contest with Jon Snow as he's drifting away in his boat. And then suddenly he just lifts his arms like this, and you just see all of the dead bodies on the beach just stand up with their blue eyes. And like,
that's
it's like
gnarly.
An incredibly creepy scene. And
that's
they
wild.
do such a good job of like a slow burn over because this is season 5 now. They do such a good job of like just slowly building the dread of the White Walkers and the Night King. It's such in that episode, Jon Snow kills a White Walker for the first time because he has a Valyrian steel sword. It's long. Luke, as we've mentioned, has not watched Game of Thrones, but I will eventually persuade him to watch it. This is my third time through, and I'm loving it so much. It's incredible.
I'm spending my time getting sandwiched in Murphy beds and going to the hospital.
Exactly. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, if you guys could subscribe to the YouTube channel, I would sincerely appreciate it. Like I said yesterday or today, we just passed over 200 subscribers, which is a cool accomplishment. So we'd appreciate that. Also, I have a link in the description that takes you to all of our social media pages. If you guys could follow those as well.
Yeah.
We will also have an episode coming out either later today or tomorrow that is covering episode 5 or 6 of The Rings of Power.
Right. Also, check out our Andor episode and hear the story about the Murphy bed experience and how my jaw looks like I gained 20 pounds overnight.
Yeah, if you want to hear how Luke almost died, then go to our Andor episode 5 breakdown and hear the story of how he got straight up just destroyed by a Murphy bed.
Yeah. It's a listener.
It honestly is one of the crazier stories I've ever heard. So this episode starts, speaking of slow pacing, as we were complaining in the Andor episode.
Yeah.
There's like at least a third of the episode is this funeral scene for
Lady
Lena.
Very long.
And
really bringing family love together, you know?
Yeah. And what was weird about it is we were looking at each other. We're like, what all happened in that scene? Because we were trying to just kind of get our notes about us.
Right.
There were a couple of specific things like Prince Laenor down in the water and his dad getting super pissed off about it. There's Rhaenyra.
So was he pissed just because he was showing so much emotion and because it looked like he got drunk?
I think he considered him making a fool out of himself.
Okay,
yeah,
cool. That's what I figured. Just wanted to make sure.
But it was also weird how he went publicly in front of everybody, like stormed up to his lover and was like, "Go get
I know.
You're like, dude, all you're doing is making this worse.
I know. That's what I was thinking too. Anyways.
But then there was like Rhaenyra's family clearly mourning Sir Harwin's death.
Right.
But they can't show it. So she's like telling the kids to calm down and all this stuff. And
right.
Alicent is just like death staring them as they're doing it. I want to be like, they're dealing with this because of you and your thing with Larys or whatever. But then like we were like, was anything else interesting happening in that scene? And there's little stuff like there was a kind of a confrontation between Damon and Viserys that went nowhere.
Right.
But like for the most part, like it was just a really long scene.
They did have that one part where Damon laughs during the funeral.
Oh,
Did he? Yeah.
yeah. Well, it was the mention of
making
of
like purity of blood or something like that, and he's
something
just
like
yeah, like actually no, because people are just sleeping with random Night's Watch guys. I don't know what they are. Kingsguard.
Kingsguard, yes, or City Watch.
City Watch.
Kingsguard or City Watch. I
think it was City Watch. It was City Watch. The head of City Watch was Sir Harwin, correct?
It was either that or the Kingsguard, and I'm 50-50 on it.
Shoot!
I can't remember.
Let us know how we're wrong.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, let us know how we're wrong in the comments.
But finally, things escalate when shortly after the funeral scene, Prince, or not Prince. Actually, I think he technically is a prince. Prince Aemond, just goes out and steals Vhagar.
Just goes out. Yeah, so no, he's incredibly intuitive, and in contrast with his brother, he's very good about understanding the general politics, it seems like. Like while his brother is doing ridiculous stuff like getting drunk in corners,
getting drunk and passing
like making odd comments to like servers and rolling his eyes during funerals, he's watching people. He's like studying the game at a very young age, and he's actually one of my favorite characters at this point.
Yeah, he is interesting, and he's got a little bit of an edge to him, like a little bit of like and it's kind of like, it's almost like a chip on his shoulder, like because they've been mean to him too,
right?
Because they gave him the pig, right?
The pig, yeah.
So like I feel like he's like that kid that's had a really rough upbringing that's almost made him into a little bit more of an asshole, but in like in a good way that's advantageous to him.
It's shaped him. He's learning to watch. He's not just there to seek pleasures like his older brother is.
The concept of dragon partnership is a really interesting power dynamic in this, because like he went from an inconsequential second son. So like even if Aegon's claim was legitimized, which we don't know what's going to happen, but even if Aegon's claim was legitimized and he became the king, Aemond would be a nobody. He'd be the guy that would take over if for some reason Aegon died. That's basically all it would be. And overnight, by approaching Vhagar and somehow bonding with him, he suddenly became one of the most powerful people in the realm, like overnight, because Vhagar's the biggest dragon. And like there's that really interesting scene at the end where, and this is where I want to go from here, even though it happened at the end, because I think it was the most interesting and intense and meaningful moment of the episode. Otto Hightower is 1000% aware of where this is going. Yeah. We are going to war. It's you, Lady Alicent, versus Rhaenyra. And winner's getting the Iron Throne. He's with it. He knows what's going to happen.
There was legitimately lines drawn after Aemon's eye gets cut out, when they're all in the that room, and there's like legitimately lines drawn of like what the war is starting to map out to be.
And so I want to get to the dynamics that lead to that point here in just a second, but it was really interesting how he basically tells Lady Alicent, like, I think he views Vhagar as a swing piece. I think he viewed it as like, this is a tough matchup. I'm not sure if we can win this war. But then he was like, he said something along the lines of like, Aemon doesn't realize how much he's helped us by stealing Vhagar. Like, and he literally says Vhagar to our side. Like he views it as like kind of like these armies amassing, so to speak. Yeah. It was, but then at the same time, the partnership between Damon and Rhaenyra amounts to their amassing of power. It was kind of like the episode that demonstrates the build up towards the ultimate lines being drawn, like you said, which was a really cool dynamic.
And as soon as the king is dead, the Hightowers are just going to be in power, right? And that's actually what the preview kind of highlighted. It looks like. I wonder if maybe the king finally dies. Our over/under for the king finally dying has been off 3 episodes in a row. Like, the king is due. He's missing his entire arm now.
Well, dude, but did you watch the preview for the next episode? It's clear that what I gathered from the preview is that Viserys enters a state of medical health that has him basically incapacitated. Right. And then the Hand of the King essentially announces, I will be acting on behalf of the king from now on, which is like I'm the king, It very similar to Tywin Lannister in season 3 and season 4 of I believe season 3, season 4 of Game of Thrones, where like Tommen's the king and Joffrey's the king, but he's really the king because he's the hand of the king and he's making all of the decisions. And it definitely, I think we know from intel that next week is the last episode with recasting, so all the kids are going to be grown up now. But for the rest of the show, I think they said they're
Aegon is looking like a Mad Eye Moody out there. Did you notice that with his like a leather patch? I mean,
dude. Well, I've seen the. I seen a random photo on Twitter of the actor who plays Aemon as an adult. He kind of looks like a Damon type of vibes, but with an eye patch. So it's kind of cool. But we get 3 or 4 seasons of this, so it's gonna be a really interesting conflict. Aemon steals Vhagar, kids catch him, ends up in a fight.
Which just escalated
really
very quickly. Yeah.
And Aemond is like going for the jugular, like talking all sorts of shit, calling them bastards, doing all this stuff.
And there was definitely like a change. Like as soon as he had his hands on that dragon, it completely gave him big time.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. And like he just felt, and even at the end, like he's like, I may have lost an eye, but I gained a dragon. Like he just views that as
was
like
the statement of the week.
Move.
Yeah, that was the statement of the week. That was the big one. Mm-hmm.
So there was a scene in Game of Thrones, and it was in season 1, and I believe you've seen this scene because you got through to Ned Stark getting his head cut off.
Right.
So, and let me know if you remember this. So they're traveling down the King's Road to get to King's Landing, and Arya is sparring with the Butcher's Boy on the water, and Lady Sansa is walking with Joffrey, and they run into him. And as Arya and the Butcher's Boy are fighting, they stop when they see the prince approaching. And the Butcher's Boy kind of jokingly like slaps Arya with his wooden sword because she lets her guard down, and he's just kind of messing with her. Joffrey like takes it seriously, like pulls his sword on the kid. Things escalate quickly. Joffrey ends up threatening Arya, and then the wolf comes in and bites. And bites Joffrey on the arm, and it ends up being very similar.
A huge deal. Yeah,
they all get dragged in front of the king. And Robert's like best friends with Ned Stark, but it's his wife's son that got messed up by the wolf.
Right.
And Alicent, the way Alicent acts in that scene is very similar to Cersei. Like just like you've got to kill the wolf. You've got to like this is like she's 100% like you got to listen to my son. There's even that moment where Alicent is like you should be taking like Aemon's story is all that should matter and all this stuff, like very eerily reminiscent. And if you remember that little incident between the children is a large part of the escalation between the Starks and the Lannisters.
Yeah,
very similar scene.
Yeah, there. Lady Alicent is just dropping my book by the episode. She reminds me of like that type of mom where her kid gets in a fight at school and then the mom goes in and just only her kid's saying is truth. Like nothing else is real. Like whatever my kid says is the actual truth, even though her kid is the one that, caused a huge problem. She is just dropping in my book, and she is starting to get really power hungry too.
Oh my goodness.
Super power hungry. Like she is ready to be like the dominant queen.
Well, that's how depraved the Hightower family is, because like Alicent loses her freaking mind in the process.
Right.
Like goes to cut out Rhaenyra's son's eyeball.
Dude.
In the process ends up like deliberately like slashing the arm of Rhaenyra with her knife. Like big deal. And literally like she's like deeply ashamed, and Otto's like
good girl.
Yeah, like you now have shown that you have the strength to do this. Like
really quick with the arm, the maesters in the show crack me up, because it's obvious that like they're lacking from like a medical standpoint, right? And the maesters are funny because like they're the experts, like they're super well trained, but really all the maesters do is just tell people how jacked up they are, and then that nothing can be done. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're having issues with your childbearing? Yeah, you're gonna die. Like, oh, you have a sword through your heart? Yeah, he's dead. He's dead right now, and everyone's like, yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, they're like the Captain Hindsight guy that comes in at the end and is like, ooh, you probably shouldn't have let that knife go through your heart there. That would have
The eyeball slash. Yeah, he's gonna be blind for sure.
The eye is beyond repair.
Yeah.
What gave it away?
Yeah.
was it the fact that it's not there anymore?
I know, and everyone's looking at him like, oh, okay, yeah, the maester says the eye is gone, and like the eye is severed in
They're
half.
literally stitching his eyes shut.
Yeah.
They're stitching his eyes shut while talking
just
about
the maester is just on one, and then they go back and they look at each other like, I don't know what they want me to tell him. The eye's gone. I don't know.
Like if it was Darth Vader was the king, he just would like killed the guy for like saying the eye is gone.
I know. Sorry,
no, you're
tangent.
fine. So, gosh, okay. So the last thing I had in my notes was Rhaenyra and Damon, and I thought this was a really interesting scene. So, again, like we have to adjust our worldview for the purpose of Game of Thrones,
Right.
Like the whole like incest thing is just kind of normal with the Targaryens, okay? Like it's kind of a thing, all right? And like it's clear that these two have feelings for each other.
Yeah.
And I thought the scene where Rhaenyra and Alicent in the High Towers, they all know what's next. Like they know that the eyeball was the last straw and that this is going to war.
That fractured their families.
And I thought it was a really, really smart move from Rhaenyra and Damon to show strength by combining.
Right. It finally, other than the fact that their children can be completely jacked up by having sex with your uncle, it created a true, like a pure blood situation with Game of Thrones, which, they're all about it, so yeah, unless if their kid isn't completely jacked up because of this, it was a strong move from a genetic standpoint, I guess you could say.
It's the classic Targaryen thing, like the coin flip. Like it's either going to be crazy or it's going to be fine. There was that mention that we talked about from Game of Thrones where Joffrey basically says, like, tells us that Rhaenyra gets eaten by her brother, presumably Dragon or Aemond or Aegon, not Dragon. Dragon would be a dope Targaryen name.
That is a sweet name.
But side note, my favorite Targaryen name that I've heard is Rhaegar, which was Daenerys Targaryen's older brother. So there's the mention in Game of Thrones of from Joffrey that Rhaenyra's brother's dragon eats her while her son watches. I think the son that watches is going to be her son with Daemon. That's my guess. Because it just carries more significance that way. Yeah, but we'll see. And to be clear, like I don't know who ends up winning this civil war, and I presumably one of you guys will eventually spoil it in the comments, or I'll see it on Twitter. But just because she gets eaten doesn't necessarily mean they lose the war. That's all I'm going to say.
True.
Because it could be Daemon that ends up on top. It could be that her son with Daemon ends up on top, and one of her other sons with Sir Harwin ends up getting eaten. Like
there's a lot of sons.
There's a lot of potential casualties in this coming conflict.
All of a sudden, there's just incredible amount of children that potentially could be king or queen. Like out of nowhere, they've all just had sex with each other and made babies, and now there's like 8 kids that potentially have like a run at the throne. Well,
it's so funny how like the whole Game of Thrones concept like is built on the concept of like your claim.
Right. That's Corliss's statement, right? When he's like history along the lines of like history doesn't care what your blood is, they care what your name is, or something like that.
That's 100% what I'm getting at. It's like who has the legitimate claim to the throne, and they this is happening in Game of Thrones right now with the Boltons in Winterfell. Like it's like Ramsay is a bastard that's been named a trueborn, so now he's Ramsay Bolton, but the dad just got his wife pregnant, and it's probably a son. And like Sansa looks at him and is like, you realize he's going to have a stronger claim than you because he's a trueborn and you're a bastard. Like there's all these like little dynamics at play. And it's so interesting because like when there's doubt cast on a situation, it becomes about who has the stronger claim. Right. And we already have a precedent from the opening scene, which we accidentally watched the other day because we accidentally clicked on it, where Jacaerys is gonna die and his sons are dead, and they have the big council meeting, and it's like, are we taking Rhaena, who's Corliss's wife, or are we taking Viserys, who's his nephew? And they choose the nephew over the daughter. So it's like they clearly set the precedent up front that the houses of Westeros prefer the male descendant
Right.
over the female descendant, which is a huge deal. But yeah, the Rhaenyra Damon scene at the end I thought was really, really cool. I thought their plan to somehow,
it was a strong move.
oh yeah, and to allow Laenor to go to Essos, which is what he wants to do anyway, and he just wants to live his life. Like he's no interest in the nobility of it all.
Exactly. Which is so typical of Game of Thrones, because and when one scene Laenor is like, I'm here, I'm reestablishing my devotion to you, even though we don't like love each other, I'm here for you. And then like in the next scene, he's like paddling off in a boat to just live his life.
But clearly when she made him that, because presumably her and Damon approached him with an offer. And when he made that offer, he clearly was like, yeah, let's do it.
Do you think he was involved in that part? Or do you think that was his partner saying, hey, they want me to kill you, but I can swing to where you're still alive?
I think Rhaenyra and Damon approached him either by just one of them or both, and basically said like, here's the deal, a war's coming, I need to be allied with Damon, we need to have a marriage between him and I need you out of the picture.
So you think that was the major deal? There wasn't a deal within a deal?
She might very well have been like, we either got to kill you or you can do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So the other thing too is, I don't know if you noticed this for the previews, who they suspect is Laenor's body is in bed. Like they're giving medical care to someone.
No.
Yes.
I did not see that.
So it was like a super, super quick little glimpse, and I'm pretty sure it was a burnt body. It was like full Anakin Skywalker burnt body.
Oh my gosh, that's a huge deal.
It is. So all of a sudden, this guy is awaking from being burned alive, and he's like, I'm not Laenor.
And I wonder who the guy ends up being.
It's probably some peasant.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's insane.
So that's what I think I saw. Like obviously we'll see.
That would be a wild twist in
there
events.
Is a body that I saw in a bed and it looked burnt.
So the reason why this is vitally important is because one of his granddaughters has a dragon, okay, and Corlys controls the entire fleet.
Yeah.
So which side is Corlys going to end up fighting for? Is going to end up being important.
So and that's what's really interesting is him and Damon are buddies, right? Yes. And then during that true line drawing that happened after the eye was cut out in like the chambers of the king or whatever that was, like Corlys is behind Rhaenyra. So or Rhaenyra. So I would presume at this point he's on their side. So they have some dragons and the fleet.
Yes, but the lines are loose there.
There's of course,
not a deep
dude.
Connection there. Because now that Damon's no longer the son-in-law, the only real connection they have to anybody is Rhaena. Is just Viserys' cousin. That's really,
right.
That's really it.
True, and then they might get pissed when they figure out that their son's death might have been fabricated and he's actually still alive.
Yeah, or were they in on it because they didn't want their son to, like, who knows? Like, I'm really curious to hear where that all goes.
They weren't in on it because that was like pure terror by his mom.
That's right.
When
she
was
freaking out.
Oh my gosh, dude.
That's a good
Game
point,
of Thrones is so jacked up.
Dude, it is.
Just a mom finding her son's charred body on the ground, like, ugh. I'll pass.
I know that's the hard thing for you to get through, but it does. I feel like they've been way better in House of the Dragon avoiding the pointless violence as much as the other ones.
Here's what I'll say. Out of all the episodes, this is by far the one I enjoyed the most because it all made sense to me. Yeah. Like the whole entire like charred son on the ground thing, like that holds weight. That's necessary for that scene. Like I totally got it. Like this by far was the best episode in my book.
I think that when you finish House of the Dragon, whether that's at the end of season 1 or at the end of season 3 or 4 or whatever, I think that you're going to want to watch Game of Thrones because you'll gain an appreciation for the narrative weight of all this.
Paints my heart. Anyways.
All right. That's all we have for this particular episode. Keep an eye on the feeds in the next few hours for our Rings of Power episode.
Thanks a lot.